Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be a Mousepad Roundup. I'm just going to throw a lot of these pads in one video, give you guys an overview of the pad, how I feel about the pad, and just my overall experience about my personal performance. The first pad I'm going to talk about, you guys have seen in my last few videos. This is the Superglide in the Chrome version. Yes, there is a issue with this particular pad in terms of liftoff distance. I would not recommend that you guys go out and buy this pad third party unless you're okay with setting your mouse to a high liftoff distance, at which point the pad actually does become quite playable, but you are going to have to keep your mouse on the pad at all times. If you're somebody like me who lifts your mouse a lot to reposition, etc., I'm not sure that this is the best recommendation, but I do have to say that if they are able to get this to work in the future, the pad just looks absolutely phenomenal in person. It really does have like a change in color shift depending on your RGB in your room and your lighting in your room. It really does look exceptionally cool. Probably one of the coolest mouse pads that I've personally seen in person. So hopefully they can correct it in the future. I think they issued everybody refunds, which was really amazing of Pulsar to do given the cost of each one of these glass mouse pads. So it's cool to see that Pulsar definitely did not treat their fan base, treat their customers poorly in that respect. But hopefully they can fix this thing in the future. This thing is badass. The next mouse pads are from Esports Tiger. I have the new Tai Bao and the Qingsui 3. Both of these pads, in my opinion, are actually very good. The quality of the pads is not necessarily going for the conventional thing that a lot of people are going for. A lot of people are going for that either fake or real pour-on. This is not trying to do that, but the quality of the pad is exceptionally good. It's a meaty pad when you get this thing, and the most important factor is the surface. I personally perform exceptionally good on this particular pad. It feels like a hybrid surface, almost like the feeling that you get with the Equate Plus V2, but it's very smooth. The reason why I think this pad performs exceptionally well for me, in particular for track-heavy games, is X and Y feel very consistent to me. So whether you're gliding diagonally, vertically, horizontally, probably one of the most consistent pads that I have felt to date with my core pads or just default skates on the Death Adder V3. If you guys are wondering if it is controlled, if it's fast, if it's balanced, personally, I think it is a nice balanced pad. When you want to go slow, static friction is rather open and fast, but it's very easy to stop and control your mouse. So I don't find it to be a wiggly pad. I don't think it's as fast as something like a Hayate Atsu, but I would say that this pad is more along the balance side with a little bit leaning towards speed, depending on what skate you're using. So a nice balanced hybrid pad leaning towards speed. The next pad is the Qingsui 3, another awesome design from Esports Tiger. This is a cloth feeling pad that is very smooth and silky to the touch, and one that is also more on the balance side, again with a tick leaning towards speed. So kind of similar surfaces, but the way that each of these perform with stopping power is a little bit different. The Qingsui 3 is a bit thicker, I feel, than the Tai Bao, but I think they're both kind of around that same thickness. You can see that the bases are different. The Tai Bao uses this new rubber base, and then the Qingsui 3 kind of uses like a thinner, more sticky base than the Tai Bao. But overall, I think both of these pads are kind of in the same camp in terms of speed. It really depends on which one you might prefer in terms of the look, the durability, the feel. Again, the Tai Bao feeling more like a hybrid pad, probably having more durability than the Qingsui 3. I think both of these pads perform really well. Both of them ship flat, and the packaging is really nice that you're getting here. I think for the price of admission, I think these pads are only $35. My recommendation for what I prefer out of the two, again, I like both. I just prefer the Tai Bao a little bit more, and I'm performing exceptionally well on the Tai Bao in particular. Up next is a pad from Super Beings. This is the Memoria pad coming off of their Memento. This is a cloth feeling pad that is a little bit grainy. You will feel it on your skin just ever so slightly. I think this is an exceptionally good performing pad. It is slower than both the Tai Bao and the Qingsui 3, slower than glass pads, obviously. I would kind of put the speed in line with something like a Saturn Pro, and it is either pour-on or kind of a mimic pour-on. I'm not sure if it's an authentic pour-on, but it does have a little bit of squish to it. I would say that it's probably between 2 and 3 millimeters thick, and the foam does have, I would say, kind of between a soft and an Xsoft Artisan feel. I think the pad performs exceptionally well. It kind of reminds me of the Chemic Spyre pad, but in an aqua blue. Performs a little bit differently. I think dynamic friction feels really nice here. So if you need it for flicks and track-heavy games, I think that you're going to have a nice open feeling experience, one that doesn't have any tug as you are kind of whipping around. It has great stopping power. You can stop on a dime. You get that extra cushion that you can dig into for control. And then static friction is a little bit slower. So I think that this pad is going to perform really well for anybody looking for something new that feels great, that has that kind of cushioning that you can dig into for your tack shooters. This I would put in the camp of something along the lines of you're balanced with a tick towards feeling like control. Something like the Lethal Saturn Pro, the Artisan Zero. I think that this is kind of competing for a top spot in those camps. Overall quality is great. Again, the base looks like a pour-on type base. The stitched edges are very nice. The rounding here, everything looks very high quality on the Memoria. If you're looking for something that has a little bit of a grainy feel and feedback on your skin, nothing that feels abrasive or overly abrasive or anything like that. It feels great on the skates when you are gliding. A little bit of control. Definitely something to look at if you're looking for a Saturn Pro alternative. Something, again, in that camp. Up next, I have a resin pad from NPETtech. This is something that's going to be an alternative to people who prefer hard pads, people who prefer something potentially like a glass pad. This has a very sticky base. You can see on the back here, sometimes it accumulates dust and hairs and things like that. You can just wipe it off, and then it sticks right to your desk and does not budge at all. A pretty interesting base for a hard pad, and it is a resin pad that has a little bit of texture to it. Something that, again, to me feels a little bit closer to what we used to use back in the day for hard pads in CS, in the Pro CS scene. And this is something that actually feels quite good. Dynamic friction is, of course, effortless. It has low dynamic friction. The little bit of texture on the pad does give you a little bit more control, I feel, on static type movements than glass. Dynamic friction does feel a little bit lower than in comparison to some glass pads like the Sky Pad and the Superglide pad. So if you're looking for a cheaper alternative to glass, the resin is definitely the way to go. You're getting a similar experience with a little bit more control, which actually could benefit a lot of people. I think the pad also looks pretty good. The base is good. Quality seems good. Nothing that I've seen or noticed that the surface has worn down. But of course, the durability will be less than glass. So I think if you're looking for a hard pad alternative that isn't as expensive as glass, the NPETtech resin pad could really resonate with you. Certainly something to maybe get to see how you might like glass pads before you spend the premium for glass. Overall, a pretty solid pad. I had a lot of fun with it. I performed well on it. Again, it is nice, open feeling, kind of like a hard glass pad, a little bit more control. Up next is the Spyre Loque. This is another aqua blue pad, kind of a similar color to the Memoria that we looked at. This is a pad that definitely has a slower dynamic and slower static, in my opinion, than the Memoria pad. It still feels rather balanced. It feels pretty good, but it does have a lot of abrasiveness to it. Kind of feels like the esports UBA pad. So it does have like this thick graininess to it. I'm not somebody who likes that. I think it's just a little bit too thick feeling. Overall, a pad that can perform pretty well if you're looking for something that maybe has a bit more control. I certainly don't consider this a speed pad. Again, kind of on that balanced side, but I think when you do get down to it, that increased abrasiveness and friction does have a bit more control. I think vertically and horizontally, vertical feels a little bit slower to me than horizontal. I could just be kind of tripping on that. To me, vertical feels a little bit slower than horizontal. Overall, though, depending on your skates, again, the skates on the Viper V2 actually do feel faster. The skates on the Death Adder V3, just the stock skates, actually do feel faster on this pad than my core pad. So really the speed of the pad is going to be pretty determinant on what skates you're using. But overall, kind of just another pad that falls down into the middle of the pack. I don't think it's really anything that I would recommend just because of the abrasiveness and the overall speed. It's just not something that I connected with. And up next, I do have the new Traigun. This is a completely different Cordura pad compared to the original. This is a lot more abrasive. It's not as silky feeling, and it is a whole lot thicker, and you can see it is a lot larger. I think this one coming in at 500 by 500, and the thickness is probably between 4 millimeters and 6. This is a pad that is extremely consistent feeling, but one that you feel every glide. This is something that is very noticeable on your skates. I think static friction feels nice and open, not anything that you ever feel tug or an immense level of additional control. I think the dynamic friction is something that kind of feels effortless as well. I would say that the overall speed of this pad, though, does not reach something like a hard pad, like a Resin or a Superglide or Sky pad, something that's kind of just another balanced pad, one that does feel very consistent, though, with X and Y, and one that does have a lot of feedback on your skates, whether the default skates here on the Death Adder V3 or core pads. You definitely feel the glide. I think it's a great performing pad because of its consistency. I performed very well on it. I just don't personally enjoy the feel of the glide on my skates, depending on whatever skate I'm using. I just didn't really like that feel. And then I do have the mother load of glass mouse pads. This is the XXL Superglide pad. It is exactly the same as the Superglide, just extremely ginormous. It is 980 by 420. If anyone needs this much space to utilize for your mouse, or if you just want to rest your keyboard on the same type of surface that you have your mouse, this is a massive pad. I am not somebody who would use a pad this big, personally speaking. It is very heavy, so keep that in mind. Something that if you, for whatever reason, just want to have that consistency on what you are kind of resting your hands on, or if you need a lot of space, if you're a low sense player, definitely a pretty cool pad. Just a bit more expensive. I think it's $150 compared to the XL, which is around $90 or $100. Overall, a great glass pad. You guys can check out my reviews of the Superglide XL. Again, one of my favorite glass pads, one of my favorite hard pads, just extremely massive, too massive for my personal desk space. And then I do have the Golden Standard from Highstar. Not really a huge point of reviewing this because I think they've only made 300 of these. Overall, supposedly it does use a pour-on. To me, the pour-on feels a little bit dense. It's like you kind of push in and you get some easy give, and then you're kind of met with something that has quite a bit of firmness to it. Overall, the design is interesting. You're either going to like it or you're going to hate it. In terms of the overall glide, it does feel like a bit of a faster hybrid pad on static friction. Dynamic friction is kind of down the middle. It's rather balanced. It's not super fast. It's not anything that is controlled. Overall, I think it's just a mediocre hybrid pad. There's nothing overly special about this. There's nothing that I said to myself that this would be a main over anything else. Probably not something I'm going to use again after testing it. It's just kind of one of those things that feels very familiar, something that we've used before, like a Fnatic Dash, like a Aqua Control Sakura. It's just nothing that feels like a special, unique surface that wants me coming back for more. For me, the speed, I prefer something that is a little bit faster feeling. And I just think that something like the Equate Plus V2 that I recently reviewed, comparing them side by side, it's just hard to recommend something like this over the Equate Plus V2. I think the Equate Plus V2 is more fun, feels more open, and just has a bit of a better speed for track-heavy games. Arguably, the golden standard could be a little bit better for tack shooters if you need to go a little bit slower. Me personally, I would stick to the Equate Plus V2 for both tack shooters as well as games like Apex Legends. I have the Fnatic Jet. This is not something that I would have in my top 5, not something I'm going to main, but the caveat there is that I do perform pretty well on this. And I think if you're somebody who's looking for a hard pad alternative, but with a lot more comfort, you're kind of getting it with the Jet. This is very similar to the Wushang pad from Esports Tiger and pretty similar to the type of feel from the pad that we got from Vancer. This is a laminated pad, therefore I don't quite know how the durability is going to hold up. I have had some artifacts come off while I have been gliding. I don't know if that's anything involved with the coating on the pad or if that is just something for my skates or some other form of an artifact. But overall, I do think that the durability and the ability to keep the pad clean, you can see there's just fingerprints, oil prints all over this thing. That is kind of in question. In terms of the overall glide, again, if you're looking for something that's fast and open feeling, the Jet definitely provides that. But I don't find that if you want ultimate speed, something like a Skypad, a Superglide, I don't think that this is quite comparable to those. It does feel open, it does feel fast, but I think that the stopping power is a little bit better on the Jet compared to glass pads. But the static friction actually, to me, feels a little bit more controlled than something like a Skypad. So if you're looking for speed, I think you're still going to fall into the camp of the Superglide or the Skypad. If you're somebody, though, who can't take the feeling of hard pads, definitely you will get a little bit of comfort, and overall performance on the Jet actually happens to be quite good. And guys, there are pads that are coming that feel very unique, very refreshing. I am testing a sample right now from one particular company that feels exceptionally good, and I do want to let you guys know there are very special things on the horizon. Out of everything I tested in this video that should be available for you to purchase, personally speaking, I think the thing that feels refreshing to me in terms of a surface that not only looks good, plays good, and also feels somewhat refreshing and unique in terms of its hybrid feel compared to other things on the market. I would go for the Esports Tiger Tai Bao. This is something that I had a lot of fun testing and just something that looks really awesome. And I think that the price is reasonable for what you're getting. That's going to be it for this roundup, guys. I hope it helped. If anybody had questions, I know we just briefly go over these pads in a roundup. I might do individual reviews for some of these, definitely not all of these. So keep your eyes on the lookout for that. Again, I hope it helped. If it did, please leave a sub to the channel. I'll see you guys in the next review. Peace.